Today, I want to show you something that changed the way I look at money forever. It's the moment when numbers stopped being numbers and started becoming stories. Because GDP, inflation, and interest rates are not just statistics, they are like the weather forecast for your money. If you learn how to read them, you'll know when to sow, when to harvest, and when to stay calm and protect what you have. Today, we'll learn how to read GDP, not like an economist, but like an investor. Think of the economy like nature. There are seasons. Sometimes the sun shines brightly, businesses grow, jobs are plenty, and people spend happily. That's spring. Then comes summer, hot, full of activity, but sometimes too hot. Prices rise and the market overheats. After that, autumn arrives. Things slow down, companies become cautious, and growth fades. And finally, winter, the cold season of the economy, when businesses struggle, unemployment rises, and everyone just tries to survive. But remember, after every winter, there's always spring again. That's the rhythm of the economy. And GDP is the number that shows us which season we're in. Let's go through each season together. I'll explain what's happening, what the data usually shows, and how smart people respond during each phase. Season 1, spring, stable growth and hope. This is the most beautiful time in the economic cycle. GDP is growing steadily, not too fast, not too slow. Inflation, measured by CPI, stays around 2% to 4%, and people feel confident. Jobs are stable. Businesses start to expand carefully. Investors feel optimistic but not greedy. This is the period when economic balance exists, growth with control. If you're a business owner, this is the best time to expand strategically. If you're an investor, it's a great time to hold long-term positions and look for healthy companies with real value. In short, spring is the season to plant seeds. Season 2, summer, overheating and rising prices. Then things get hotter. Everyone feels rich. GDP grows too fast, sometimes above 8 or 9%. People spend like there's no tomorrow, and prices begin to climb rapidly. That's summer, when the economy overheats. Inflation starts rising above 4% or 5%, and the cost of living increases. Central banks, like the State Bank or the Federal Reserve, begin to raise interest rates to cool things down. At first, most people don't notice. They still believe the good times will last forever. But smart investors know when the sun is too hot, it can burn. So, during summer, the wise thing to do is prepare your umbrella, reduce risk, limit debt, and avoid overexpanding. If you're in business, don't overstock or open too many branches. If you're investing, shift some money into defensive or cash-generating assets, because the hot summer never lasts forever. Season 3, autumn, slowdown and uncertainty. Then comes the cool wind of autumn. The GDP growth rate starts to slow down, quarter after quarter. Maybe it was 8% before, now it's 6%, then 4%. Interest rates are still high because the government is fighting inflation, so borrowing becomes expensive. Businesses start cutting costs. People stop spending on luxury goods. Investors become cautious. You can feel the mood changing. Autumn is not a crisis. It's the stage before it. It's when wise people begin to protect their capital and focus on cash flow. If you're running a company, this is the time to clean your house, cut unnecessary costs, sell unproductive assets, and prepare for a possible downturn. If you're investing, focus on defensive sectors, food, healthcare, utilities, things people always need, even in tough times. Autumn is the season to preserve your energy. Season 4, winter, recession and reset. And then the cold arrives. GDP begins to shrink, sometimes even going negative. Businesses stop hiring, people lose jobs. Banks tighten loans. Everyone feels uncertain and afraid. This is the winter of the economy. But you know what? Winter is not the end. It's the beginning of a reset. Because during winter, governments start lowering interest rates again. They release stimulus packages, printing more money, supporting businesses, and encouraging people to spend again. This is when brave investors quietly prepare. They don't panic. They accumulate good assets at low prices, waiting for the next spring. Winter is the season of preparation, not despair. It's when opportunities hide beneath the snow. Real example, Vietnam's current season. Now let's bring it closer to home. In early 2025, Vietnam's economy grew around 6.9% in Q1 and nearly 8% in Q2. Those are strong numbers showing that GDP is rising steadily after a tough global period. Inflation, measured by CPI, was around 4.55%, a bit high, but still manageable. Meanwhile, the PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, a measure of how busy manufacturers are, hovered around 49 to 52 points. Above 50 means factories are expanding, below 50 means they're contracting, so at 49 to 52, it shows the economy is recovering, but not booming yet. That's why I say right now, Vietnam is between spring and summer. The economy is still growing, but the heat is rising. We must enjoy the sunlight, but keep an eye on the thermometer. Many people think the faster GDP grows, the better. But that's not always true. Imagine your body temperature. A small rise means you're healthy and active. But if it keeps rising, it's a fever. The same goes for GDP. When GDP rises too fast, inflation follows. And when inflation rises, central banks raise interest rates. And when rates rise too high, people borrow less, businesses slow down, and eventually the fever breaks. That's why the goal is steady growth, not explosive growth. The best GDP trend is smooth and sustainable, not wild and unstable. Now, let me teach you a simple trick to read the economy's weather report. There are 3 numbers you can track every quarter. GDP growth rate. Is it rising or slowing? CPI. Inflation rate. Is money losing value quickly? PMI. Business activity. Are factories and service companies busy? If GDP and PMI are rising steadily and CPI stays between 2 to 4%, you're in spring. If GDP jumps too fast and CPI rises above 5%, it's summer. If GDP slows, PMI drops below 50, and rates stay high, it's autumn. And if GDP turns negative and the government starts cutting rates, that's winter. You don't need to be an economist to see it. You just need to observe calmly and consistently. Here's a fun exercise that I personally do every quarter, and it only takes 2 minutes. Open Google and search for Vietnam GDP growth Q1 2025, Vietnam CPI inflation Q1 2025, Vietnam interest rate Q1 2025. Then write down each number and mark it with an arrow, rising or falling. Do this every 3 months and you'll see a pattern. You'll know exactly which season your economy is in. And trust me, this simple habit will put you years ahead of 90% of investors who only read the headlines. Now, let's quickly summarize how smart, disciplined people respond in each economic season. In spring, GDP is rising steadily. Inflation is low to moderate. Interest rates are stable. This is the time to expand with confidence. In summer, growth is rising too fast. Inflation is high. Interest rates are increasing. Here, the smart move is to reduce risk and avoid overexpansion. In autumn, growth starts slowing down. Inflation is still high. Interest rates remain high. This is when you cut costs and protect your cash. In winter, growth is flat or negative. Inflation is falling. Interest rates are decreasing. This is the season to accumulate and prepare to invest. When you understand these cycles, you stop reacting emotionally and start acting strategically. Most people do the opposite of what they should. In spring, they're still scared from the last crisis. In summer, they get greedy. In autumn, they ignore the warning signs. In winter, they panic and sell everything cheap. But the wealthy, they act differently. They buy when everyone else is fearful. and prepare when everyone else is partying, because they know the economy always moves in cycles. You see, nothing in life stays the same forever. Seasons change. Businesses grow and decline. Currencies rise and fall. The secret to financial success is not avoiding the cycle, it's understanding it. When you know the cycle, you don't fear the storm, you prepare for it. And that's what we're doing here, learning to see the rhythm behind the numbers. So tonight, take a few minutes and ask yourself, which season do I think my country is in right now? And what should I do differently in my business or investments because of that? If you answer honestly, you'll already think like a macro investor, not just reacting to news, but reading the pulse of the world. In the next part, we'll go one level deeper. We'll talk about what each season means for entrepreneurs and investors, how business owners can adjust their strategies, and how investors can protect or grow their wealth depending on the cycle. We'll explore real tactics, when to expand, when to save, when to invest, and when to sit tight. Because understanding the season is only half the journey. The next step is knowing what to do in each one.